I was just complaining to Cern Basher that there's a real problem with his show. And the problem with his show is it's probably got the best information of any show that I do. And that counts Larry. That counts Brian Wang. That counts Jeff Lutz. I mean, holy mackerel, we have great people on this show. And yet Cern, he brings stuff that you can really use on your day-to-day planning and thinking about the economy, thinking about the stock market, thinking about Tesla, and thinking about Tesla stock, the four things we try to do on this channel. But I was telling Cern, I have trouble coming up with an emotionally laden thumbnail that will cause you guys to want to come in and take a look at these charts and graphs and cool stuff and hear what Cern has to say about them. And he promised me that today this will all change. Cern, glad to have you on board.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me. Let's see if we can make that happen. Although putting me up against those guys, I mean, I don't know. I'd be happy being the next level down from those guys.
Oh yeah, and I even left out Scott Walter, who
Yeah.
up until last week had the #1 video ever on my channel. So there's another one that you're up. But you know, you and Scott, I'm sure you're fine with each other. One of the other beating the other. You know,
When Scott wins, I win. That's great. I'm happy for him. Yep.
All right. Well, you're on. I'm turning you loose.
That sounds great. Well, let's start with something that I like to show on your channel quite a bit, and that's the Cybertruck.
Yes.
And you may have seen a nice video that was released by Tesla yesterday.
I did.
About some of the off-road features of the Cybertruck.
And I didn't have a chance to really delve into it. It was, yeah.
Well, there you go. So this is breaking news on your channel.
That's right.
So this is an image of the Cybertruck here doing some water testing. And they said that the vehicle has a clearance of 81 centimeters, which is, I believe, is 2 feet 8 inches.
Oh.
Which I think is higher than almost anything else out there.
Okay.
Again, I'm not a truck expert, so I don't know for sure, but my guess is it's up there in terms of the height. But this was a pretty cool shot, I thought, of the truck blasting through quite a bit of water.
Yeah, yeah.
Do not try this at home, I think, should be the disclaimer on this one. Okay. This is also Cybertruck related. And I'm sorry, at the bottom, there we go. Elon commented to Chuck Cook's post about FSDs coming to the Cybertruck with version 12.5.
Yes.
And 12.4 has just been rolling out. So 12.5 is the next one in 2 weeks. And the other thing I think that's cool about this is finally merging the city and highway code.
Right.
So if you recall, all these releases lately have been to do with the city. They threw away 300,000 lines of C++ code. And, you know, it's AI, but that wasn't the case with the highway stack.
Right.
So it's going to be fun to see what improvements we have there.
And we're hearing a lot of rumor and speculation that maybe 12.4 will never go wide, that it's glitchy enough. In fact, I haven't seen a YouTube video on 12.4 for days, I think, because I think it's just glitchy enough that nobody even wants to report on it. So I'm now hearing that maybe we'll just, the next one to go wide will be 12.5.
Perhaps. Yep. Now, when I first saw this image here, I thought it was Scott Walter with a Starlink Mini attached to the glass roof of his Model Y. However, this is not Scott, so I guess there are other people out there that attach Starlink Minis to the roof, including Tesla employees.
Yeah.
But Scott could be out there testing it. He would have the capability to do so.
Yes, indeed.
All right, and other breaking news, and I think you might have discussed this earlier this morning.
This was an exciting piece of news. It was my headline. It was my thumbnail. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd like to take this breaking news, which is the Tesla and Intersect Power have an agreement to sell. Tesla's going to sell them 15.3 gigawatt hours of Megapacks for various solar and storage projects. And this is a company that Tesla already has a relationship with. Apparently 2.4 gigawatt hours are in operation already with this company or under construction.
Okay.
So it's not 15.3 gigawatt hours of new, sales. It's just an extension of the existing part of the business.
All right.
Okay. But to put that into perspective, in the first half of this year, I think Tesla has delivered about 13 and change gigawatt hours of energy storage.
Right.
So this would be the last 2 quarters worth, basically, of deployments.
Or the other way to look at it would be they only have capacity to do 40 a year. So this would be 15/40, which would be 3/8 of their entire capacity.
Yeah. So it's a significant chunk for sure.
Yes.
So that's great. So let's extend this a little further from just the story and the headlines and do some analysis on this.
Okay.
So Jordan at the Limiting Factor recently put out this video. I think this might be from July 10th, so it's about a week.
Uh-huh.
And he developed a Megapack growth forecast, basically trying to answer the question: how many Megapack factories does Tesla need, and when?
Ah.
Okay, so let's go through that a little bit, and then I'd like to add my analysis on the end of this.
Okay.
Jordan did most of the work here. I'm just sort of piggybacking on his work.
I got it.
So his low case analysis was that we would need another 6 factories, including the one that's being built in China right now.
Okay.
Okay, so we have one in North America in Lathrop. We have one being built in China. And then he's suggesting that in his low case, another one in Europe in a couple of years, and then North America, China, and then North America again.
Okay.
Okay. And then he also did a high case where you basically need to build one every year. And he's got the areas there where he thinks that they might be needed.
Okay.
I think the folks in Australia would probably like one now.
Now these would all be the same size, all be 40 gigawatt hour?
Well, that remains to be seen, but I think that's the going in assumption, is that they're all similar.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is that the Tesla Megapack factory at Lathrop cost about $400 million to build.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, that sounds like a lot of money. But to put that into perspective, the factory in Mexico, the Gigafactory in Mexico, might cost something like about $10 billion.
Right.
Right. And the factory in Berlin, about $5.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So the mega factories are a lot cheaper to make than a gigafactory is.
Right.
And Jordan's conclusion with this was that for the 13 factories that you need in his high case, that at 400 million a piece, that's $5 billion. It's the cost of one gigafactory.
Right.
Right. So, building 13 factories sounds like a lot, but when you put it in those terms, it's not really.
Now, if I'm trying to do the math in my head, but I'm pretty good at that. I'm looking at 54 540 gigawatt hours, which is about half of the terawatt that we thought that Elon was shooting for by 2030.
Yeah. So we've still got a ways to go.
Okay.
And I would say, again, in Jordan's video, he does a great job of building up this analysis.
Okay.
So I'm just presenting some of his conclusions here.
Sure.
But he's got 4 different phases that he's building up here, and it shows what the production is required on a global basis to meet those phases.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So did a great job in his video. Highly recommend that folks watch it.
And if he's right about this, and we don't get to that 1 terawatt, the unfortunate part would be we would only be talking about $150 billion in revenue.
You're jumping ahead, Randy.
I'm sorry. I'm just,
So here's my chart.
Okay. All right.
Taking Jordan's numbers at face value,
Right.
his low case and his high case. This is the factory capacity over time. So I'm starting at 40 gigawatt hours with Lathrop.
Okay.
then assuming at the end of 2024, Shanghai is complete. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It'll probably be close.
Uh-huh.
That'll get us to 80. And then a factory a year out to the end of 2032 gets us to 400 gigawatt hours a year.
Got it.
In his low case, it's a bit more of a stair step. And we get to 240 gigawatt hours.
Okay.
Okay. So just as you were mentioning the revenue impact of that, and I assumed that the cost per Megapack is about $256 a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
I think that's a bad assumption. I think that will continue to come down over time.
Yes.
But that's what these numbers are based on, just so that they're comparable. So in the high case, it gets you to revenue of about $100 billion.
Okay.
In the low case, it gets you to revenue of about 60 billion.
Okay.
Now, to put that into perspective, Tesla's revenue in the last 4 quarters ending the first quarter of this year, we don't yet know what Q2 numbers are. So let's just go back to the end of March. Tesla's auto revenues were 78 billion for those 4 quarters ending that period.
Right.
Tesla's energy business revenues were 6 billion.
Right.
Right. So in the low case, if you go from 6 to 60 billion, that's 10x.
Right.
Right. In the high case, 6 to 100 billion, that's more than 10x. Now, I do think that there would be a lag in the revenues here. It's not like you build a factory and instantly you pump out the revenues.
Sure.
So actually, in reality, you should probably lag these numbers by a couple of years. Okay. For both the time it takes to ramp up production and the time it takes to actually deploy the storage units.
Right.
Right. So the 2032 number on here maybe really should be 2034.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a promising business, and it'll be a material contributor to Tesla's overall business. And what this chart shows is revenue. It doesn't show profitability. And so as it stands right now, the energy business is actually more profitable than the auto business. So each dollar of revenue, whatever that is, creates more profit for Tesla.
Right.
So that's even more powerful than what this chart's showing in terms of revenues.
Sure. And for both of those, we have the additional side businesses that might come out of what we know are going to come out of them, like FSD on the auto side and like auto bidder and such on the energy side.
That's right. And auto bidder, like FSD, only grows as deployments grow over time.
Right.
The larger the system you have, the greater the revenue opportunity there is.
Right.
So yes. And presumably as well that the AI powered software gets better and better over time too.
Right. And
so
yeah. And I don't know if maybe I'm going to be jumping ahead of you again, but once again, I tend to take Elon at his word until proven otherwise. And so with his projection of a terawatt, we could just multiply the top case here by 4. And we're talking about real numbers.
Some serious numbers. Yeah. The question is, how long will it take them to get there?
Right.
But the good news is building a megafactory is not like the challenge of building a gigafactory, and nor is it the expense.
Right.
Okay. I'm using some cartoons today as transition points. I thought this was kind of funny. Some aliens traveling past Earth, and they say, they call it Earth. I call it a hot mess.
Yeah.
So that may be one of the reasons, Randy, we haven't had alien contact, is that they just think that we're a hot mess.
Yes,
and they just drive right on by.
Not interested in that neighborhood.
Not interested in that neighborhood until we get our act together. All right. Now we've reached the part, I think, that this is hopefully the mind-expanding, mind-blowing part of the show.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. These are some slides from a post I did a few days ago, talking about the potential profit picture for 4 of Tesla's businesses. Now, 2 of them exist and 2 of them don't yet exist.
Right.
Okay, they're coming. So we've got autos, energy, robotaxi, and bots.
Right.
Okay. So if we take a look at the revenue from selling an automobile, let's say on average it's $45,000.
Okay.
It's a one-time revenue that Tesla gets to book.
Right.
Now there is some maintenance and service revenue and supercharging. I've excluded that from this analysis.
Okay. Yep.
Energy. They sell a box of batteries for $1 million.
Right.
There's also some maintenance and service revenue ongoing, perhaps 15, 20 years into the future for each one of these.
Right.
I've excluded that from the analysis just to make it easy.
Sure.
Okay, but I'm aware of those things. Now, the two new businesses that we've talked about a lot, Robotaxi and bots. The difference between these businesses, they have the potential to be recurring revenue type businesses.
Right.
Okay. And with Robotaxi, in my model, depending on which scenario I look at, could be like $62,000 a year in the Tesla run scenario where they own and operate the Robotaxis.
Okay.
This is not my most optimistic scenario. In fact, it's towards the lower end in terms of revenue.
Okay.
Okay. And with bots, Elon has actually confirmed that they will rent bots or offer it as a service. He also did say that they will eventually sell them. But robots as a service, again, in my some conservative numbers from my models, about $32,000 a year.
That is conservative.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to be conservative because these numbers
it's about half of my estimation. Yeah, but yeah, I'm good.
These numbers get nutty, Randy, without being.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. I've used that word a lot this year, nutty.
Yeah.
Okay. So here is my rough estimate of profit per unit that they sell. So when they sell a $45,000 automobile, the net profit might be $4,500.
Okay.
Okay. On the energy side, it might be $137,000.
That's only 13%.
That's just net, not.
Oh, net.
Yeah.
This is after operating.
Yeah.
This is operating. Okay.
All in. This is after taxes, after everything.
Operating profit. Okay. Oh, okay. After taxes.
Net profit to shareholders in your hand, net profits.
Got it. Got it.
Robotaxi, $25,000.
Okay.
And bots about 21,000.
Okay.
Okay. So if you look at that and you say, well, okay, versus autos, the energy storage system is 30 times the profit of selling a car.
Right.
Why don't we prioritize energy? Right? Now, the answer is, yeah, you should, if making a box of batteries is as easy as making one vehicle.
Right.
Right. So I think there needs to be some adjustment for weight, for number of batteries, perhaps, is one way of looking at it, looking at the energy content. So if we adjust for that, in the middle here, I look at the average energy content of each product.
Okay.
And let's say the autos right now are 85 kilowatt hours, and a Megapack is 3.9 megawatt hours.
Right.
And so if you compare that energy content to a vehicle, it's basically 2% or 0.02 in terms of the number of vehicle equivalents. Right. So it takes a lot more batteries in a battery storage unit than it does in a vehicle.
Right.
So you can't make as many.
Yeah.
On the other hand, a Robotaxi, I think, will have a little bit smaller battery pack.
Yep.
So you might get 10% more.
Maybe
1.1.
Maybe even a lot lower, smaller battery pack.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah, could be. I was trying to be conservative here.
Yep.
And then bots, right now, as it's currently configured, the Optimus bot has a 2.3 kilowatt hour battery pack. So you can get 37 bots for every vehicle produced. Okay. Now, it also happens to be that the weight of a bot versus a car is similar kind of ratio.
Sure.
About 3% by weight. Okay. So, depending on how you want to adjust this, you could also adjust it for perhaps complexity. And maybe right now you could argue that bots are a whole lot more complex than vehicles. But I think that's probably temporary. Once they start making actuators in the hundreds or billions, the complexity calculus goes way down for a bot.
Yeah, I think I could make an argument that the manufacturing complexity, the complexity of the components of the bot, and the complexity of the completed assembly is going to be much less right from the kick. Now you add the software into that, and the actual output of useful work is obviously substantially more complex than the car.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, what I've done then is taken these estimated annual profits that we talked about before in light purple, pink,
Okay.
fuchsia, whatever color you call this,
Okay.
and adjusted it for the vehicle equivalents.
Okay.
So the energy storage unit now goes from 135,000 down to about $3,000 per unit. So now it's not looking quite as attractive, right? But Robotaxi now adjusting for that bumps it up a little bit from 25 to 28. But bots, because we can make more of them with the same number of batteries, instead of 21,000, you're looking at $774,000 of profit. Right. So now the equation tilts very significantly in the favor of bots.
Yeah.
Maybe my math is completely wrong here. Maybe I'm off by a factor of 2. Okay, slice this in half.
What if it was 10? What if you're off by a factor of 10?
Factor of 10, fine.
16,
right? Yeah. Right. So very clearly, the potential profit from a bot is significantly higher than selling a vehicle, and it's also significantly higher than Robotaxi, which is what ARK Invest is so excited about.
Right.
And rightly so.
Yeah,
anytime you have an opportunity to take a business and 6x your profit potential by basically selling the same thing,
right,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's an even better idea, right, with humanoid bots.
Right.
Now, this is over 1 year. A car lasts more than a year. I'm not buying a new Tesla every year.
Right.
These energy units last for 20 years.
At least, yeah.
Right. And actually, I should have adjusted for that in the next slide. I didn't, but we can do it in our minds. Robotaxis and bots, these are recurring. This revenue comes every single year. And so let's just assume that everything lasts 5 years.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the numbers on that basis. Okay. Same chart, same numbers, but now 5 years worth.
Yeah.
So the car, again, I've only sold the car once over 5 years.
Yep.
Maybe I'll come back in year 6 and buy another one, but I've still only made $4,500. Energy, I guess I could have actually multiplied this by 4 for the fact that the energy unit's probably going to last 20 years.
Right.
I didn't adjust for that. We can do that in our minds. And if you do that, you can see actually it would be a greater than 1 here.
Right.
Okay. But Robotaxi now, if we do that, we're looking at $140,000 over 5 years.
Right.
It's 31 times the opportunity of selling vehicles.
Right.
And humanoid bots is 900 sometimes. And it's kind of funny that the math worked out to 911 here. But we're looking at over $4 million of net profit in vehicle equivalents from humanoid bots. And again, let's say I'm off by a factor of 10.
Yeah.
It's 90 times the profit potential of selling a vehicle.
Sure.
So if somebody is struggling to understand why I and others are so excited about humanoid bots, this is why.
No, I have never struggled with that. I've struggled with the opposite. I've struggled with why there isn't a larger FOMO from the investing crowd, because they're not stupid. And this is so obvious.
Yes.
I understand that you could come up with the risks. There's always unknowns when you have a new product. Does it work well? Can it last more than a year? Or does it need extensive repairs? What about climate? I work with the last major factory that I helped with consulting was silk screen printing, and the temperature and the humidity impacted all their settings, and they had to make changes all day long and have big fans, and so what impact does that kind of stuff have on a bot? I mean, there's all kind of risks, things that we don't know yet, but the TAM is so huge that the makers can basically charge what they want in the early days, well, up to the equivalent value of a human. And so therefore the potential income is huge until the point at which there are enough of these being made that there's actually a competitive market, which could be 10 years or it could be 50 years.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. One of the critical comments on my post was, well, don't you have to take into account demand?
Yeah.
And my response was, as it relates to bots, well, human labor is the biggest component of GDP.
Right.
So the demand is there. If it can do what human labor can do ultimately, then it's the biggest market we've ever seen.
And as you've pointed out, I've pointed out, the demand will increase because to the extent that these bots can do things cheaper, it increases the number of things that become valuable. Things that could not be made, things that are valuable ideas that could not be manufactured because the labor was too high, all of a sudden become possible.
Yeah. Yep. Now, for those that don't like numbers, here it is in a visual format.
There we go. Yay.
One Robotaxi is equal to selling this many vehicles,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And the bots. Okay, you can count them if you like. I
Yes.
believe there is 911 images of vehicles in this page.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah. If I'm wrong, I apologize. That there's not a lot of precision in some of these things. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So it's one of the criticisms is, well, the bot, we don't know if that's even going to work. And to me, that's a very lazy response because the bots have already shown an ability to do work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We've seen it from not just Tesla, but from others, that they can move stuff around all day long if you want them to.
Yeah.
I think Sanctuary and others have showed the ability to do that. It's just a question in my mind of progression. How quickly can they progress and do other tasks?
Yeah.
Right. And it's driven by the same technology and the same process that FSD is. And I think there's an increasing awareness that with FSD, it's also just a matter of time.
Oh, I think there's an increasing awareness, at least among those who are paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I find it interesting though, because many of those people that say, yeah, okay, I believe that autonomy is coming, they still sort of wave off bots and say, well, that may not happen.
Right.
And my point is they're the same thing.
Not even putting it into their formula at all.
Yeah.
That's the funny part.
Yeah. So if, Elon has said too, that when vehicles become autonomous, it's the greatest step change of, value increase in history.
Right.
Well, just wait until you see what bots do to your valuation models.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This I thought was funny because it relates to my spreadsheets. This is a couple guys looking at a bear who looks very angry. And one says the teeth and the claws are scary, but it's the math that gets you. I feel the same way about my models. Maybe not scary, but just, crazy, nutty. It's just math.
Yep, just math.
All right. Every quarter I put out this chart. It's kind of an approximation of Tesla's impact on a couple of different metrics.
Okay.
So here's the chart. The chart shows that 2.6 billion fewer gallons of gasoline are likely being sold because of the Teslas that are out in the world. Okay, and the money that has been saved on gas at $3.60 a gallon, if we use that as the price, is approaching $10 billion a year of money saved from not buying gasoline.
Wow.
Now, this is kind of US based. In some countries, the cost of gas is much higher than that.
Or sometimes lower. Yep.
Sometimes lower. So I'm just using US numbers,
Fair, reasonable. Yeah. And you're even using Arizona instead of California.
Right. Yeah. And the number of miles a year, 13,500. Some people drive a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are all just rough estimates.
Sure.
Okay. Then in addition to that, 23 million metric tons of CO2 not put into the atmosphere. 1,765 fewer gas stations needed. You and I talked about the decline of gas stations.
Yeah.
So kind of tracking that here is a rough approximation. So we don't need almost 2,000 gas stations anymore. 6.2 million people plus their families who don't have to stop at those dirty gas stations. And 6.2 million people who can resolve recalls with over-the-air software updates.
Yeah, yeah,
Whether the media understands that or not.
yeah.
So I just, you can just see, it's back to the chart, you can just see the progression and the impact that Tesla's having over time as more and more vehicles are produced and sold.
And I guess the vast majority of the population has no idea also is even though you need way less service with a Tesla, the service experience is unparalleled. You put it in your app and they either come to your house or they tell you where to take it. And when you get there, you just leave it off at the front desk and then you end up picking it up a little while later and you can watch it as it goes through the service. But nothing like the service experience that you would have at any other car manufacturer.
Yep, I concur with that. I've had great experience with Tesla service, and coming to your house to do tire rotation and things like that is fantastic. Yep. Okay, so one of the things that people seem to care about is market share.
Uh-huh.
Now, this shows Tesla's share of the battery electric market.
Yes.
And if you look at this chart, you could actually become concerned because you can see that Tesla's market share in Q1 of 2020 was 82%, and now it's down below 50%.
Yeah.
And so if you just looked at this and didn't understand kind of the nuance here, you might get very concerned about Tesla's position. Okay. Now, before we leave this page, Hyundai now is up to about 11% at the end of Q2 24.
Okay.
So they've made some nice progress. Ford, not too bad, 7%. GM, 6.5%. Toyota, 5%. BMW, 4.5%. And so on down the list. Rivian, number 7 at 4.2%.
Right.
Okay. So the reason this is kind of the wrong way to look at it is that you really should be looking at the share of the total automobile market.
Right.
Right. BEVs is just a subset. And if you look at that, Tesla's market share is increasing from basically nothing to some small number, but growing.
Right.
Right. This is also from AJ. This is going to be really hard to see. Okay. This is the top 59 EVs in the United States market in order of the number sold last quarter. The top two, Tesla Model Y, 101,000, and the Model 3, almost 43,000, and a total of 330,000 were sold in Q2. So Tesla accounts for 140 some thousand of that, 144,000 of the 330.
Right. Well, and as Stephen Mark Ryan has been saying for years and years, when you know 100% that Tesla's market share is going to drop. Has to.
Mathematically has to.
Mathematically has to. It has nothing to do with how what they're doing. It is a mathematical reality that their market share is going to drop.
That's right. And you may notice number 5 on this list here is a Cybertruck. In 2 quarters now, it's now 8.8%.
Wow.
Right. So past all these other companies, here's Rivian just below it. Here's the Ford F-150 Lightning, almost 8%.
Yeah.
They had a head start.
Yes.
Right. And Tesla passed them in 2 quarters.
Well, the Cybertruck is going to be moving up that list rapidly again, unless a meteor strikes the factory in Austin. We were pretty clear that we'll have a 250,000 run rate next year, and that will eclipse all of these folks. None of them are anticipating that kind of run rate.
I would guess it might be possible by Q3 for Tesla to have the number 1, number 2, and number 3 selling EV in the country.
Good.
Depending on where the Ford Mustang Mach-E is on the list.
Right.
So anyway, again, these charts are from AJ. A lot of great data from him.
Oh, definitely.
Sorry for the small font here. The good news for some of the EV makers is that they'll be saying this. On the bright side, next year's comps will be really easy. And I suppose this actually might be a little bit true for Tesla as well, given that they've had a couple of weaker quarters.
Yeah.
It does make the comparisons a bit easy for next year. Last week we talked about the semi factory, and
Yes.
Randy, it's almost finished.
Yes.
No, actually, they've made a lot of progress in
Yeah.
the footings.
Yeah.
And it's going to be it's a big factory.
Yes.
This guy Zangler, Heinrich Zane, he does a nice job of periodically going out there and doing some drone footage. So it'll be fun to watch it grow. But here's the progress in the last week.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting whether people even pay attention. But I don't know. Elon loves games. He loves to gamify everything. And I think that he might be gamifying this factory build. The steel having arrived before the foundation was put in was pretty funny. And so we might be seeing an effort to build a truck factory or a vehicle factory in the fastest ever, maybe beating out Shanghai. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah, it's my understanding that once you pour the concrete for these footers, that you have to wait about 30 days before you can erect the steel.
Right.
But that's not that long in construction terms. So we'll start seeing some of the structure being put up as they go along here and add further foundation. Yep. Not a whole lot of economic data in today's episode, but I thought this was kind of a cute cartoon. Relax, Batman. We're signaling the Fed. Projecting a pair of scissors into the night sky.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I think we're about as sure as we possibly can be right now that the Fed's going to cut rates in September.
Except for Cern. Remember the Randy rule. The Randy rule is if the economists or any group get the number too high,
yeah,
then there's a reason to think about the contrary.
That's right. No, the Randy rule is in effect, and so let's not count our chickens before they hatch.
I'm going to be mostly looking, I mentioned this morning, I'm going to mostly be looking at the employment number at the end of this month as a signal. If it goes back down to 4%, we could lose that cut. If it goes to 4.2, I think it's like we'll sign the deal.
Yeah, the challenge with the employment numbers is the revisions that come later.
Yes, right.
So maybe it's the revision of the last employment number that actually has a greater weight than the current number.
Right.
We began with the Cybertruck. Let's finish with the Cybertruck.
Okay.
Elon tweeted here, Cybertruck in the wilds. And so there was a video from the Cybertruck account, a couple, 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long, highlighting the off-road modes that the Cybertruck has.
Right.
And I just grabbed a few images. This is one here of the truck going up a slope, nothing really too special. But it's showing off their trail assist mode. And Randy, if you notice in the window there, what do you see sticking out the window?
Oh boy.
Here, I'll make it easy for you.
Oh, it's a trail assist.
So he's just got his feet sticking out the window, and the vehicle is doing the driving for him. All he has to do is steer.
Right.
Now that kind of off-roading sounds pretty fun to me. That sounds pretty easy.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also overland mode. There's rock mode and Baja mode. This must be rock mode. And I think they found a slope here. Maybe that was it. It was 63 degrees. This is an area that's called Hell's Gate.
Right.
And one of the guys got out and he had trouble walking up the slope. He was slipping.
Wow.
So it's apparently easier for a Cybertruck to climb this than it is for a human.
Goodness gracious.
This might have been the 63-degree slope.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look at that.
I'm not sure if you've ever been in a car on a slope like that, but that's got to feel a little bit scary.
Oh, no kidding.
And then here. But yeah, I like to always finish with some Cybertruck images, and today it was thanks to the Cybertruck account on X.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are fascinating. Phenomenal. Yeah, the Cybertruck. So I can't again remember. We talked about this a year ago, not you necessarily, but on the channel we talked about probably being the most photographed, certainly vehicle ever, maybe the most photographed object ever. Marilyn Monroe and a few others had that distinction. Maybe it's Taylor Swift now, as far as the most photographed object or thing ever. Eiffel Tower, I think, was in the list. But certainly it has lived up to the expectations in that regard. As I asked Larry again, Larry again the other day, whether people are still taking pictures of him as he drives into various places with the Cybertruck. He says, yeah, it's still happening. So this cannot hurt the Tesla rep or the Cybertruck future sales.
No, I agree with you. And I think what's special about the Cybertruck, I mean, obviously there's a number of things from a vehicle functionality standpoint, and those images that we just saw are pretty amazing. But the truck itself is a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Right. You can take this truck, which is fine as it is.
Yeah.
But then you can add your own whatever to it. And as I've shared with you on this channel, you know, almost every show with some Cybertruck images, we're seeing some pretty creative stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the early days of that. I think we'll continue to see some really creative wraps for the truck and so on.
Yeah. And having been in the advertising specialty business for over 20 years, I can imagine that these wraps will, once people can actually buy them in any quantity, there'll be lots and lots of businesses that will be buying them as a billboard, and it'll be, a very substantial part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, now the truck just gets a lot of eyeballs just on it for what it is. And so add some advertising to that, then suddenly that's a very attractive proposition for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So we're only a few days away from the earnings report. Any big questions on your mind for next Tuesday?
Well, I think the thing I'm most curious about is Tesla Energy, and I'm really hoping that they give us some additional disclosure about that business and its potential, the future plans, the profitability of it. I hope in the 10Q there's more disclosures than they've given us in the past. That's in the short term. That's really interesting to me. Obviously, longer term, what really matters is Robotaxi and bots.
Yes.
I don't expect to really get anything new in the earnings report from those two, particularly now that the 8.8 event or the 10.10 event or whenever it's coming is coming up soon. They're probably going to hold most of the information for that. Wall Street, I think, is looking forward to signs that the gross margin for autos has bottomed. And I think if there is a solid indication of that, then, this is me predicting short-term stock prices, but
right.
Don't listen to me for this. But my hunch is if there's solid progress on the gross margin front, and Wall Street believes what they're hearing and they see it for themselves, the stock could do quite well just on that basis.
Yeah. Jeff
Which in my
Lutz,
mind is not important at all, but in the short term it is.
Yeah, Jeff Lutz predicted 19 plus last night on the show.
Yeah.
I think that would be enough. That would convince Wall Street, I think.
Yeah, I think they would be excited about that.
Yeah.
I would really love to see Tesla kind of, blow the analysts' minds in terms of energy. Right. Because most of them haven't really factored much of anything in.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggie. And then the real question in my mind with regard to energy, based on what you've just talked about, and it's been on my mind for a very, very long time, is even will that slope that you showed be the kind of slope that we're talking about? Because in my mind, what is the big deal about opening 2 a year? What is the big deal about opening 4 simultaneously? Once you've got that, I mean, look at what mass market companies do. How many Targets do they open a year? How many Walmarts do they open a year? it's not a big, once you've got that layout, you've got the layout of the building, you've got the structure concept, you got all that done. You just got to find a piece of land that works. And in the case of these, of the energy factories, you're not talking about a Walmart that has to find the right corner that's going to have the right freeway view or, you know, the right cross traffic or whatever. You're just looking for a piece of land in a location that's maybe it's helpful if it's close to a waterway so that you can use barges. But other than that, I'm not sure there's a lot of stuff, you know, they're gonna factor in like it would with a store.
I think they should be looking at all these old shopping centers that have been shut down.
One possibility.
Just take the building and repurpose it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too large.
The entire
Perhaps
center,
those will be bot factories one day.
yeah, those entire centers might be too large, but you might take the Macy's or the you know, the old Sears or whatever it is that is no longer in use. Yeah, I mean, that's what they did with the first one, so it's not so shocking that they might do it with future ones.
To your point of why don't they build a Megapack factory once a year, you know, $400 million CapEx on a $10 billion CapEx budget seems like a rounding error.
Yeah.
Right. And then what's another one? So the question, you know, what's stopping them is then they come back to demand. Is the demand there yet for that? Or does the cost of these storage solutions need to continue to come down in order for demand to be there?
I think the demand is definitely there. One of the things that we've been proposing, maybe you heard this on my channel, but maybe something you can look at and see if I'm completely nuts or not, would only be the ability to get, the demand is there. Now people are beginning to realize that there is the potential supply. Because up until a year ago, the supply was the big issue. It was actually slowing down the implementation of solar and wind because they didn't want to build the solar and wind facilities until they had the batteries. We could now be getting into the opposite problem. Okay, now I'm going to build my wind facility or my solar facility, or I've got an application with a peaker plant, or I've got an application with a balancing at an existing you know, fossil fuel plant. I've got all these applications for the batteries, but now I've got to get the permitting. I've got to get the connect with the utilities. I've got to get all that stuff lined up before I can actually place my order, or before I can at least, you know, make a final decision to go with the order. So there could be a lumpiness in the demand that isn't based on ultimate demand. It's just based on the what would you call it? The logistics. That would be the word, the logistics of the deployment.
Yep. Now, if I was, you know, on the finance team at Tesla, and if I was asked about this, I would be pointing to the charts that I just shared today and saying, you know, energy's great, vehicles are great, but humanoid bots is where the opportunity really is. Right. From a CapEx, you know, perspective, and they are clearly, Tesla is investing heavily in their AI capabilities.
Yes.
So in my view, that they have their priorities straight.
Right.
Right. Now, maybe they're not building bot factories yet. They're not quite ready for that. But they're doing the work they need to prepare for that. And so ultimately, I think that's the exciting part.
Yeah. Just for fun, I'm trying, as you were talking, I'm trying to think of it as somebody who had a product that was in greater demand for a while than we could supply, and that was the bicycle water bottles. And because of the nature of the business, one of the suppliers had gotten out of the business, and so we were coming in as a brand new company with only one machine, trying to fill that void. And it took us a while before we bought a second, third machine, and then ramped up until we finally eventually caught up with the demand. One of the things you're trying to do is give your customers some advance notice of what you're going to be able to do. So in terms of buying that second machine, buying that third machine, okay, by the end of next year, I'll have my fourth machine in place. So you can count on this many at that time. So this could also be what's taking place, is that Tesla could be letting their customers know, letting these utilities know, letting the hospitals know, et cetera, that are the big demand users on these kind of things, letting them know, okay, this next factory will be going in 18 months. This one will be going in 37 months, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And we will slate you for that if you want to plan for that. So that could be part of what's going on.
I wouldn't be surprised to see some further announcements in terms of Megapack factory expansions.
Right.
Yeah, that would be good.
And it could be right next to the Lather facility. It could be, you know, it could be in the same, you've already got all the logistics set up there, the transportation logistics. You've got the canal where you can barge the batteries out of there. So it might be just as wise to put the second one there. I mean, a second one there even before you go to Europe or whatever.
Perhaps there certainly would be an incredible savings in terms of, you know, if you had the factory closer to where the ultimate customers are, if you can figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
It sure seems that a lot of batteries have been going to Australia.
Yeah.
Right. It may make sense to have a factory in that part of the world.
Yeah, I'm one of the things, as you mentioned that though, is that California is the 5th largest economy in the world. So you might think that there would be plenty of application for a second facility there. Anyway,
Probably.
great thoughts,
Yeah.
all kinds of fun things. Thank you so much for bringing your wild and crazy slides and your projections. And yeah, it's only math. It's just math. Yeah.
It's just math, Randy.
Don't be afraid. Yeah. Don't be afraid. All right, Cern, it's been great. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.